Hey guys, how are you going? And welcome to a very special video where I am joined by the Director of Development at Big Ant Studios, Mike Merren, to discuss Cricket 22. So welcome, Mike. How are you going today?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Gareth. I'm doing very well. Actually enjoying the sunshine of Melbourne for once. It's actually out and sunny today.
Yeah, last few weeks have been pretty poor weather-wise. Um, so are you able to tell us a bit more about your role and how long you've been at Big Ant for?
Yeah, so development director basically means that I kind of oversee, as it kind of suggests, the development of products that Big Ant are doing. So I manage the programmers, the artists, the designers, have a kind of major sort of influence on the design of the game. But the key thing I suppose that I do is just make sure that all those departments kind of work together, collaborate, and hopefully get a game out on time. Because obviously, the Ashes doesn't move. It's always got a solid date that we have to hit. And just making sure that we try and get the best game we can in for that day.
Yeah, awesome. So I've actually got a few questions about the game, both sort of in general and a bit more detail. I've asked a few people around what they were sort of wanting to see or wanting to hear with the game's release next Thursday. So one of the first ones is I've just edited myself actually from the news over the past 24 hours. Of course, be well aware of the Tim Paine news. Has that shaken anything up to do with the game at all? I know he's one of the cover stars.
Yep.
Any changes or anything you have to do there?
So I mean, look, yeah, Cricket Australia were obviously pretty quick to contact us yesterday when things obviously went live, and at the moment we're trying to work it out. To be honest, it's still pretty fresh. I think it's pretty much 24 hours since maybe roughly the news came out, maybe just over.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we're just trying to work out what impact that may or may not have. I mean, the biggest, most obvious impact is that within the game he's not going to be captain, so we have to wait until we know who the next captain is, and then adjust that within the game whenever we do our next patch. Because that's something that we'll have to react to. But beyond that, as yet, I don't know whether there'll be anything that we need to rush around and do anything with. I think everyone was fairly calm. I think, given the game comes out on the 25th, it's 5 days away.
Yeah.
It's if it had been a month ago, we might well have had to have changed a lot more things. Whereas it's almost as if like that juggernaut was already gone. It's like there's not much you can do about some of the things that are already winging their way to stores and things. But I'm sure, yeah, from the game point of view, we'll have to patch and do certain things. We've done it before. We've had interesting things from Ashes cricket, I think it was, if I think back, when the someone on the England team
Yeah.
had an altercation. I think we had some London Underground promo materials going out, and they quite literally were just about to hit the London Underground with these 5 or 6 players, and he was on it, and we had to pull those and adjust it. So we've rolled with the punches before. I shouldn't actually say roll with the punches. That's maybe but anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. So at this stage, the game's definitely still has been delayed or anything, still coming out on the 25th.
They're all going to hit the 25th. As I say, yeah, everything's. As I say, I think it's at that point now where I think discs or the boxes are in PB in Queensland, for instance.
Yeah.
They're waiting to go out to each store. So it's kind of, as I say, the juggernaut's kind of already going. So that's we'll deal with anything else afterwards, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Just another thing to add to the mix, really.
Yes.
So how long has Cricket 22 actually been in development for? And was it originally planned to come out in time for these Ashes?
Yeah, so I mean, it's always been intended that we would come out for the Ashes. So we obviously started working on it when pretty much Cricket 19 was wrapped up, and we were doing partially our teams were working on patches for Cricket 19, and some of those guys from the rest of the team were then working on new bits and pieces for Cricket 2022, I should say. And we kind of as certain bits finish, we move people across from one project to another. So we've got some guys that work on our other sports titles. Obviously, we released Tennis World Tour as well I forget the date. Gosh, it's crazy in terms of I think PS5 Tennis World Tour was maybe April this year, and then you know, but in the meantime, during that time, we already had people working on Cricket 22. It's been a major, because obviously we haven't done cricket on the new consoles before for the next gen. So there's a lot of things that go on in terms of new engine tech that have to come up. You know, we brought stuff across from Tennis World Tour, and then you've got your Cricket 19 kind of staple in terms of how the game plays and animations, and how we then add to those animations. And we over the last year, I suppose it is, we've really kind of reworked a lot of stuff in terms of kind of the foundation of it, to try and make sure that it's good for the new consoles and also for the future. That's a key thing in terms of how we kind of build our stuff. So yeah, so it's probably, I reckon it's close to 18 months since someone started working on it. And when I say someone, I mean like a small 2 or 3 people kind of getting the groundwork going. And then solidly with most of the team from Christmas last year, and then pretty much basically the entire studio as soon as we finished the DLC of Cricket 19.
Yeah. So going on from the new gen, like the PS5, etc. Did it add in some more complexity, or did it like sort of make it easier to develop? I'm assuming like future proofing it down the line, probably easier going forward, but like to add in that initial sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's the whole thing from a technical point of view is interesting, because PS5 and Series X, or what Microsoft would call Gen 9 in terms of their kind of things. You know, the Xbox One is Gen 8 for them, and Series X, Series S is Gen 9. They've kind of, you know, in terms of what they're capable of, it's the machines are impressive, and they've done a lot of things with them, which it can make it easier for us in some ways, and then obviously a lot harder, because we've still got to support, you know, the PS4 and the Xbox One.
Yep.
And you effectively, we've suddenly got, what is it now? There's Series X, Series S, which actually isn't. It's kind of similar to a Xbox One X, but not quite. Then you've got your PS5, your PS4, PS4 Pro, a Switch. You know, there's Steam. There's, you know, potentially Windows Store at some point, and all those kind of things. So you suddenly end up where we were with Cricket 19, where we probably did what, 3, 4 platforms. Suddenly we've got, I don't know how many now. It's like, it feels like there's 8 or 9. And then in the mix, obviously, we did the pre-order with the Nets, which is they're actually completely different products, effectively, that go through a completely different approval process with Sony and Microsoft. So you get, you know, in that time frame, you suddenly feel like you're doing, you know, 5 times as much as we did for Cricket 19. Even though in reality it's not quite, but it's, you know, just in terms of the logistics of testing and all those kind of things, it's it ends up being a mammoth task. And then you put into the mix the little thing called COVID, and we've got what feels like 60 satellite studios because everybody's at home. It's the last year and a bit on cricket's been interesting, let's put it that way.
Yeah, so my next question was actually related to COVID, to do with like the challenges faced because of it and like the restrictions that we had. Has that put like was there anything planned for the game that you weren't able to because of COVID, or like how was working from home during the stage of making the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because obviously we've had it for what now? It's March 2020, wasn't it?
All blends in, doesn't it?
Something like that. Everything merges into one now.
Yeah.
But that period, obviously, we were doing tennis at the beginning of that, and that first work from home stuff that happened, everyone I think kind of embraced it quite heavily, and it actually was pretty good. This second time round, we'd all kind of got back in the office at the beginning of the new year, and then sent home again. And then we came back in the office and then home. It was a real yo-yo effect for a period of time. And I think that hit everybody pretty hard. It's definitely made the last sort of 4 or 5 months tough for everybody in terms of finishing a game. My hat's off to everybody in the studio for actually getting it to the point where we're actually going to be in time for the Ashes, which is great. In terms of those things, that has meant that things like we've got a new online mode that's going to come in the game, but that's probably now going to be just before the start of the Ashes rather than being in the base game, which is where it would have intended to be. So there's a couple of things there. Because it's an online mode, we've kind of gone, look, you know, people, if they are going to play online, they've got to get patches anyway. So so there was those kind of things that we had to kind of look at, right? What do we do that won't affect the end user in terms of, you know, they're going to get these modes and they're, you know, but how do we make sure we actually finish the game is a key thing. So so yeah, so there's one thing there that probably we would have wanted in the base game, but probably going to be a week or two after release. But it should be an exciting mode that everybody who plays online should enjoy.
Yeah, well, it's just flowed onto my next question perfectly. Is it called Ultimate Team or Dream Team? I saw an article saying
no.
Dream Team.
So I can't remember one of the magazine things that talked about it, and I think they put words in my mouth there in terms of calling something Dream Team. It's not. I think we're still trying to work out what we want to call it. It's actually at the moment it's just called Online Leagues. Okay. But the premise of the whole mode is that you go in, and from our licensed players, which there are now hundreds, you pick a squad of I think it's 15 players that you can take from those licensed players we've got, and you're allowed. Obviously, you've got to have a wicket keeper. You've got to have a certain amount of bowlers, things like that, and you can only have so many of certain ratings. So you know, you can't fill your team with everybody at 90 plus. You know, so there's a structure there to how you kind of put your team together, and then you can take that online and play against other people. So maybe, you know, in the public's eye, so to speak, in users' eyes, they'll kind of look at it and go, well, I'm putting my dream team of players together, but that's not what the mode will be called.
Okay, cool. Is it going to be cross-platform, or is it just going to be depending on what console you're on?
Yeah, at the moment it's just going to be what console you're on. We are actually talking to the platform holders about doing things cross-platform and going forwards. So, I mean, one of the first things we might do in the future patch is obviously allow Xbox One and Series X players to go together with this. That would be the first and probably most straightforward thing for us to do. But they're things that we're talking to Sony and Microsoft about, not just for this game, but for whatever we do going forwards.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So is it purely online, no offline component at all, apart from just selecting the team?
At this stage, this mode's just an online mode. Yeah.
Yep, and no like microtransactions like FIFA.
No. We're staying away from that again.
Yep.
It's I think it's something that we talk about in the studio because so many people want an ultimate team type thing, whether it be for any of the sports games we're working on, and it's talked about, and we kind of work out, what's the right way of doing it, because there's a lot of what's the right word? Maybe a lot of flack has come to people that do those microtransaction games, but the flip side is that people still like them, people still want them. So it's so I don't know what the right thing is there in terms of, do you not do it because you feel morally it's not the right way of maybe trying to get money from your your user base, or is it what you should do because that's what players want? I don't know. It's a conundrum we have in the office in terms of what we do with those game modes.
I guess it's hard to please everyone. On one hand, you've got people who would absolutely love it, and on the other hand, you've got people will be like, they're just looking to get extra money into the game and stuff, and it's like you can't really win, really.
No. So there's one way you can told, why are you not doing this game mode, and then the other thing is, why are you trying to do microtransactions? So I know Ross is the CEO, and he's I think continually has this kind of dilemma in terms of what the best approach is. I'm sure we will go down some kind of, when we've got this many licensed players as we have, and that's only going to grow as we go forward with our all of our sports games, that there will be some style of game that's if we want to call it Ultimate Team, whatever, that's there. I just don't know whether or not we'll go down the microtransaction route. That's all.
Yep, sweet. Another question I've had a couple times, people have asked me is, what do you think it'll take to get all the countries licensed? Like, how far into the future do you think all major and minor associates will be from being in the game?
That's a really good question, and it's a hard one to answer because basically every cricket nation is obviously they can do their own thing, right? There's not a one governing body for the whole thing really that can kind of bring it all together. The ICC is the closest thing, but they have no control over the whole sport in terms of what each individual country does. And then below that, you've got things like county cricket in England that's its own beast, and and so trying to get it as licensed as possible is something that we're gradually doing. And this time we brought New Zealand on board, we've got West Indies on board, we've got Ireland, we've even got Russia in this.
Russia again, huge.
Russia are also there as well. So as we go along, we're definitely picking up and going and talking to all these different countries, and there's a couple of holy grails, I suppose, that you could look at in terms of who you'd want to bring into the game, or certainly one particular. And we talk to those governing bodies continually to try and sort of work a way that we could get them in. I think each game we do, you're going to see more and more. And I think now that we've got the support of Nacon on board with us, that may well be something that actually becomes easier for us as we go forward. And certainly, it's going to be a big push for us to try and get as many, even those kind of like the associate members of the ICC, etc. They're going to be ones we'll go after as well. So we try and get as many different countries on board.
Yeah, well, my thinking was like the minor associates, they'd probably be wanting to do anything to sort of get their country's team out there, sort of thing. But it's
interesting. Some people have a bigger opinion of what their what their country's what it might do to the game than others. So it's sometimes you'll go talk to someone and they want an amount of money that's just like no one's going to buy extra copies of the game to justify the fact that they want whatever it is that goes in it, unfortunately. And you've still got to balance that up. As much as we'd love to have everybody in the game, if it's not actually going to be something that means we can spend money on the next game because we spent it all on licenses, then it's not going to benefit anyone.
So I guess the main complexity of bringing more licenses on is it purely financial, or is it more like we want to be in the game, but you must do this, or what's the go there?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of it's to do with is to do with just finances. Also, just some countries just aren't interested. It's as simple as that. They just don't. They don't see the benefit of it, and they're just like, what do we need to do to be in the game? No, well, there's no interest, and then that's it. They'll just say, no, we're not interested at all. Even though this might be the only cricket game that allows them to be on mainline consoles. So
it's a bit odd, really.
But we have had shutdowns just on and I'm not talking about the big test playing nations. I'm talking about that layer below that kind of just don't.
It's weird. With these the new license teams that have come on board, like Ireland, New Zealand, West Indies, we already have like a few bowling actions that have been like scanned into the game, like Jimmy Anderson, like Mitchell Stark. Is there any new bowling actions from those teams? Like, will we see like a Tim Southey or like a Jason Holder, Sheldon Cottrell, those sorts of players?
Yeah, so you're going to get me now because I can't remember. There's 10 additional bowlers that we've added now. But that's across multiple kind of people will know. So there's some players there that the bowling actions have kind of been put in, but they might not necessarily be some of our licensed players. So there'll be some styles. I'll call them styles that are in the game that people will definitely go, that looks like someone. So there's I think it's about 10 extra bowling actions that have actually been added so far. So
is that both pace and spin, or just purely like from medium pace?
I think the majority, it might be like, I think it's like an 8 and 2 from pace to spin. Yeah.
Yep.
So off the top
That's
of my
exciting.
head.
That's some new news that I don't think has been announced yet. So a bit of an exclusive there, I guess.
I don't think. Yeah. I mean, it's it's the one thing that a lot of the places that might ask questions and stuff, they tend to kind of like go very top level in terms of what their questions are. So you don't really kind of delve down and get to talk about that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, that's where we've gone. The animations this time, there's I know there was a few things that people gone, oh, is there actually any new batting animations in there and stuff? And there's actually a fair ton of ton's an unfair word, but there's quite a few more animations that we've added on the batting side as well, which are one to do with kind of like, there's a few T20 shots in there that weren't there before. There's some improvements to some of the cut shots. The way our batting system works, every batting shot is based on a position where the ball's going to come through, a kind of like a grid system. And so depending on where that ball is, there's certain animations that can play out based on the input that has been put in by the user. And so we've actually in this game split up and actually made each animation use up less space, which then allows us to have a kind of a more smooth animation. It doesn't blend between different animations as much as it did in Cricket 19, which means you get much, like the animation plays out much closer to its raw mocap that was done. Whereas Cricket 19 would do these blends between multiple different batting strokes, which meant sometimes you got some weird kind of knee bends on cut shots and stuff like that. And some of those things now kind of certainly be less than what they used to be. Because we try and make sure, obviously, because it's a game, you might end up with kind of, you want a player to be able to actually take a shot in a certain position and hit it in a certain direction that probably a real cricket player might not kind of try and do, but we still want to make sure that it's a fun game. So yeah, sometimes you'll get these positions that players get into that may not be as natural as these beautiful flowing cover drives that you'll see at other times. You got to try and cover all the bases, if you like.
Yeah, well, I've already seen on the nets, there's been a whole new array of shots that we've seen. I was like, oh, we haven't seen that before. So, I mean, it's exciting to see. And I can't wait to get into like the actual game part of it and really see how it goes during a game.
Yeah. We've, funnily enough, from your videos, we were looking at some of the trajectory stuff that came off.
Really?
With some of the cut shots that pinged off the bat, and been tuning some of those in the recent kind of ready for the patches and stuff. So just to make sure that there's no cut shots that seem to fly off for six and things like that. And calm, ones where you don't put any power in and then they just disappear off into row Z. So yeah, we've been tuning some of those a fair bit recently to make sure they're doing what they should do anyway. So
awesome. So we had the 100 in the CPL DLC not too long ago. Is that sort of a model that we'll see in the future, or is that sort of a one-off just based on getting the licenses and all that done?
Yeah, in terms of DLC, let's put it this way: there isn't plans to do DLC on Cricket 22 at the moment. We've got plans for what we will bring in as additional content as the product goes through the first 6 months. So you'll see, I mean, look, people obviously understand we bring in content constantly, and listen to the community and improve things as we go through. Cricket 19's last patch with that DLC was when was it? May this year, I think. Maybe June. So that's a fair while after the release of the original version, which was in May of 2019.
Yeah, just before the Ashes.
Just before the Ashes of 2019. So we support the product for as long as we can, and try and improve it as much as we can as well, listening to what you guys say as you're playing it. But we've got some cool little things that we want to bring along the way as well. So and I'm pretty sure over the coming weeks and months people get information on what those things are. But we will, we'll actually have kind of more of a plan about what we're kind of going to release, rather than it kind of get dropped on you guys a week before it's coming out. So at least that's the hope, that we can kind of go, hey, you've got this coming up, and in a month or whenever. So and that will be much more kind of like little bits and pieces that we might have picked up that of extra content that has been after the game has been finished. But but we got some ideas about what we can give to you guys over the next few months.
Oh, awesome. Looking forward to that. So how have things, like, since the Nacon acquisition of Big Ant, how have things changed quite a bit? Like, do you think the fans of your games will see any changes based on the acquisition?
I think, do you know what the biggest thing that's changed is that nothing's changed. Nacon have been brilliant in terms of just they've you know, at the end of the day, for cricket, they absolutely understand that we know what we're doing with it. We've done, I think this is now, gosh, is it the 7th cricket game that I've worked on with Big Ant, I think. And you know, we've kind of gone through and progressed as you know, I think pretty well in terms of what we've done with the games over the years. And Nacon being French, they'll put their hands up and obviously say, we don't know cricket. You know, it's like it's not a sport that they're you know, going to be saying, why are you not doing this or anything. So they've been great in terms of just letting us run with it. So for the most part, we've been able to go right the way through, just as we would have done on cricket, you know, cricket 19, in terms of we've done the submissions ourselves, we've done the box inlays, everything about the game's kind of just been driven from us. So that's the key thing. You know, the biggest change, if you like, in terms of what we're going to see going forwards is just that probably, again, it's just that element of financial stability that allows us to go after licenses and allows us to you know, pick up things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do. You know, we can have a bit of a bigger budget on the game potentially to kind of get those features in that we haven't been able to do before. And those are the kind of things that, you know, that's what that brings us in terms of the change, I suppose, going forwards. Obviously, it only happened in February, March, or whenever it was this year. So, you know, along with the fact that they're kind of like, you know, cricket, it's not a time with, you know, in that time frame, it doesn't fundamentally affect what we can do as a company. But you know, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years should really see, you know, a big boost in terms of what we're able to actually put into our games, and that's going to be the exciting thing. So
Yeah, that's awesome. We're going to delve down a bit deeper into the career mode here. So I did see the article that you had, the interview that you had about there's a new storyline in career mode now. And I know you're quick to jump on saying it wasn't a story mode, but it was more like a storyline type thing. How long is that actually meant to last for within the career before going off and doing your own thing?
Yeah, so the way that it's set up is I suppose we'd probably call it more like an immersive career. It's probably the better terminology for it. So there's cutscenes that drive you through each element of the career mode, so that it kind of keeps it moving forward. Whereas the Cricket 19 career mode and everything else, we kind of went, here's the career hub, here's a calendar, and play a match, play a match, play a match, play a match, you know, and it was just, you know, you just go through and almost infinitum, you know, it's like that's what it was. And it had, you know, it had the seasons in there, and you got called up for Australia or England or wherever, and that was kind of the deal with that. This, we've kind of gone and said, right, you've got a manager, you've got a coach, you've got you'll visit a physio, a doctor, different things like that. There's press conferences, man of the match awards with nice big checks and things like that kind of are sprinkled throughout the career to kind of keep things kind of moving forward in terms of how your progression is. But a lot of those things, so for instance, some of the things you'll be doing in training is you will go down to the nets, and the manager will try and get you to train in certain areas that you maybe have been weak on in the matches.
Oh, cool.
So if you've been getting out to spin bowling, it'll go, right, you're going to go and do some nets training in the spin, you know, against a spin bowler. So those are the kind of things that it's kind of just tailoring that to what's going on with the match, and things like the press conference, you know, depending on how you answer questions, that may affect your likelihood of being captain in the future, for instance. So there's little things like that. And then you've got sponsorship deals that get picked up, and those sponsorship deals will drive boosts on some of your skills. And so there's a direct kind of correlation between things that you do in it sort of outside of matches to then help you with what you're doing in the match, which is kind of your key thing, is playing the matches and improving your skills is the kind of key driver for you then getting picked for, whether it be going from a club team up to a domestic stateside, whatever, and then your likelihood of getting into the Australian team.
Yeah. Those sponsorships that you mentioned, I assume they would just be ones that have been made up. Like they wouldn't be like legit, like real sponsors like a Grey Nichols or a Kookaburra.
No, they're driven from fake sponsors, as we call them.
Yep.
They effectively have, because they have effects on different things. You don't want to, funny enough, it's hard when you've got those sponsors like a Grey Nicks or a New Balance, and then you suddenly say, oh, you got a New Balance thing, and that's actually going to give you this boost of strength on your back. But New Balance back doesn't. It's like,
yeah, and if you say the wrong thing about their sponsor, they'll be like, why are you doing that, sort of thing.
Yeah, and those guys as well, just sorry to go off a bit, but the bat manufacturers have been fantastic within all our titles pretty much. They come on board and just give us all the assets that we need to set up the bats on those players. So yeah, the guys that we do have involved, like Kookaburra and New Balance, got DSC this time with Warner's bat. We've got obviously Grey Nicks, GM are in it now as well, which they haven't been before. So it's great. There's quite a few of the bat manufacturers have come on board this time, which is good.
Cool. Also going along with the career mode, there's a few people out there, like myself included, they absolutely like love the stats side of the game. Is there things like, I know one thing that wasn't in Cricket 19 that I would have loved is like a rankings, like how ICC rankings for like the test, the teams and also the players themselves. Is that something that's been looked at for Cricket 22?
There's a good question. I'll have to come back to you on that, because I've got a sneaking suspicion that it was meant to be in there, and so I'll have to ask one of the designers and find out whether or not it actually made it in there. But yes, there should be something to do with your ranking against everybody else. So I'll find out for you and get back to you.
No worries. Also, like, you do press conferences. Sorry, if you like get man of the match, take a 5-wicket bag or something. Will like pop-ups come up during the actual game saying like, oh, this is your 50th wicket in your career mode, or you've scored 5 tons now, something? Is something like that, like the immersive side of the career mode being added?
Some of that's being driven in the commentary side of things. So there's definitely some stuff that Gower or any of the other commentators will come up, and if you're hitting stuff such as your first century in your career mode, they'll get noted. And if you've taken 30, 40, 50, 60 wickets in your career mode, those kind of things get said as well. So it's kind of driven through the commentary system.
All right, awesome. Last couple of questions here. Sorry, we've already gone over time a bit.
That's all right, don't worry.
Can we see whether the weather or pitch conditions impact the gameplay? Like, say if it's been raining, will that make the pitch somewhat slower, maybe a bit not as bouncy if it's been raining for a long period of time? Or
yeah, I mean the way that it's the way the system works within the pitch degradation system, as it's called, I'm trying to remember myself exactly how it's there. There's a wetness factor that goes onto the pitch, and that's driven based on how the weather system has gone on. So if you go into a match, let's say, I go into kind of ins and outs of our weather system, but effectively we have a full cycle of weather that's been kind of pulled down from the internet in terms of a year of weather based on a location, whether that be Melbourne, Sydney, London, whatever it might be. And then when you go into matches based on those times of the year, so if you've gone in and gone, I just want the weather as it is, then you basically get the weather system as was on a certain day. If it's rained prior to that match, then that wetness figure effectively is upped for the pitch. That will affect how much it bounces and things like that. So yeah, I mean, effectively, there's a whole mad kind of weather system in there in terms of what it does with the clouds, the humidity of the ground. All those things are in there as a factor, and they affect the outfield, they affect the pitch, they affect how quickly the pitch will degrade. So all those kind of things kind of driven in the first part from what the weather's doing.
Yeah, sweet. That sounds really good. One more thing to do is this time the Academy creation tool. It's probably one of the stronger things I've seen on Cricket 19, like the ability to create teams, logos, players, and all that sort of stuff. Has there been any sort of update to that, or have you just gone, this has been working really well in the past, we're going to just continue to use it like that?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, we've revisited it a fair amount actually. We've completely redone the player head in there to allow for a little bit more manipulation. But we've also, because one of the things on Cricket 19 was you go into the player creator, and if you just wanted to make a relatively regular person, you might find it quite hard, because you go into all the different sliders, and there's like, there's your septum and your nostrils, and there's nasal whatevers and cheekbones, and everything's kind of there in your face, kind of going, what does this do? What is it? And it's quite quickly, doing a few sliders, you suddenly find like, what have I done to this face? And so it's if you just want to go in and go, I just want a nose and cheeks, jaw, boom, 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 and we've kind of done this layer where it's fairly easy to make just a straightforward kind of human being. And then there's advanced options now. So we've kind of put a layer system in there, so that if you really want to get down to it and do what a good number of our community players do for sharing on the server, and really kind of go in there and edit each and every single element of it, there's now a layer there that people then can kind of click into and get those advanced options. So it's one of the things we tried to do in this game, is just make it a little bit more accessible for those that kind of may not be kind of familiar with Big Ant stuff. So the career is an example where we don't just throw you into it and have just, here's the hub, go fill your boots and kind of find everything out as you go. And the player creator has a similar experience now. It's like, if you just want to dip your toe in and sort of see what it's like, it's easy to make a player and kind of move forward with that. But if you really want to delve into the all the stats and everything, they're all there. And if you want to go and create the logos and everything for teams, then that ability is there as well. So we're trying to, I think one of the things when we came out with Game Pass on Cricket 19, a lot of new people got involved in it and saw cricket, which was great. And so now we're trying to just make sure it's accessible to as many people as possible. I think that's one thing that Big Ant games maybe over the years haven't been. It's like you kind of get thrown in at the deep end and told swim.
Yeah. So does that make it difficult, each iteration of the game, like sort of to balance the simulation and arcade like gameplay in the cricket games? Because like if someone's just hasn't played the game before and they go straight into it, it might be a lot to try and handle, sort of things, where like how do you find that balance between like arcade and simulation?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, obviously the control systems kind of lend themselves, I think, to that level as well. It's if you're very deep into the simulation side of it and you want to kind of almost turn every single kind of HUD helper off, which a number of people do, it's like they go into Pro Camera. They turn the ball marker off around the ball and play like that, which is insane. But they play and they do really well at it. But it's like, I don't understand how they're able to do it. I'm definitely a more of a purist with. I use the two sticks for bowling and batting. I definitely don't use any other control system, and it just feels more natural in terms of how it should be, almost, especially with batting. But obviously then there's we've added the arcade controls, which is you kind of the feel of the old games where you've got the marker on the pitch, and that's definitely something that's a lot more pick up and play for people. They just kind of go in and go, oh, that's where I want the ball to bounce, bang, and it's a lot easier, and that definitely lends itself to that more arcade feel. So I think the control systems kind of help solidify that a little bit, which helps us with the balancing. But it's not easy. It's not easy to get the balance right, even when you're trying to then say, right, we've got easy controls for the pro sticks, because when you go down to that level, we actually do a thing called shot replacement, which a lot of people then think is the ball going off in the wrong direction, but it's actually and we had this with Bradman 14, I think it was, that if you put input in and you said, I want to hit it towards like into the covers, so you were thinking you into a cover drive shot, but actually the ball was pitched down leg, which means really you should have been flicking it off your legs or something, then we will play the animation that it should play, which is flick it off the legs, but the ball will go where you've aimed, which means it will go off into the covers. So it looks weird because it comes off the bat wrong from the animation, but because it's on the easy level, we want to make sure people still hit the ball where they want. Because on Bradman 14, we went, we'll just make the ball go where the animation's telling it to. And of course, what happened then was I'm aiming it on the offside, and then because it was going down leg, the animation that's been played is a say just a little leg flick or a leg glance, and what happens, goes off the bat, goes off the leg glance and gets caught by someone, and they're out. And of course then the player gets frustrated because it's like, I wasn't even aiming there, you know. So it's a kind of a betwixt and between. You want to play out what the animation's supposed to be, and then, you know, but put the ball where the player is aiming, just to make sure that one, they've kind of gone, well, there's a great big gap there, that's where I'm aiming, and not to this guy that's just there waiting for it to go down my throat and catch you out. And we learned that pretty quick on Bradman. So those are the kind of things on the easy level that you kind of bring in and make it as accessible as possible. But yeah, it's hard because it's that ramp up of difficulty, and you know, when you get onto the veteran level, you've gone from that where we are very forgiving on what you do with your inputs, to then on like veteran and expert, where you know you've got to get your foot placement dead correct in the line of the ball. You've got to get your timing right, otherwise you're probably going to flick it to first slip.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with the Bradman controls. Like I still use those to this day. They just feel so like intuitive, I guess, like you're actually batting. So like, I think that those controls are really good. Last question. What is sort of like a quite general in terms of the cricketing space for video games, but what sort of future improvements would you like to see in like the future cricket games that began?
I think, look, I mean, the big thing we'll do is, I think we're going to grow what we're doing with the career mode. That's definitely something that will kind of increase what we're doing there in terms of the immersive side of things, and potentially then more story-led stuff. Then, you know, in terms of online, I think we'll grow what we want to do there in terms of the modes, and making kind of more of a you know, using the phrase the esports side of things, and kind of building on some of that stuff. They're kind of key things. And then just and that's from a modes point of view. And then gameplay wise, it's just, I mean, it's just improving everything in terms of, you know, animations, fielding, many more bowling actions for the players, you know, having those batting, you know, we've got like a Steve Smith style, you know, well, we actually got Steve Smith in the mocap, but you know, he's got his little twitches and stuff that's there, and just adding to that as we go as well, getting more players in our mocap suit and getting their actual mannerisms. It's been hard over the last 2 years to do anything on that front, but hopefully now going forwards we'll be able to do that. So, you know, just adding more to that realism of each of the players, so that, you know, it's not just the face that looks like them, but it's, you know, it's everything about them, you know, even to how they might set themselves up if they're a slip fielder, and what, you know, what they might do when they're on their haunches or whatever, if that's a particular way a player kind of sets themselves up, and trying to even bring those kind of things into the game. So just to add that kind of realism, and then build on what we've done with the commentary this time. I think this is definitely the best we've done with our commentary system in any of our cricket games. We can do better. I know we can do better. Obviously, we've got a new lineup. I think Mel Jones is the only one that we've got from the previous games. But we've re-recorded everybody with new script. But I think we can definitely improve on that as we go forward as well, and really make that much more immersive. But there's anything in the game you could probably point at and go, we can definitely improve and make it better the next time and the next time and the next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, the future sounds really bright. If those are like, if that's the thinking going down for the future generations of the cricketing games, so it's really exciting. But yeah, those are all the questions I have. So thank you so much for taking the time on a Saturday as well to answer some of my questions and some of the questions that have come from some other people as well. But yeah, I just want to say huge thanks to what you're doing. Making these cricket games has been amazing. Like, I've been putting a lot of hours into it. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the future holds, and I can't wait for Cricket 22 releasing on Thursday.
Thursday, yeah, that's it. All right, brilliant. Thanks very much.